going to talk a little bit about IoT, connectivity, specifically intelligent mobile data, looking at 5G and everything else that IoT brings with it. A little bit about who Pangea are. We're a global IoT company. We're directly connected to all the UK networks as well as a bunch of foreign networks. This gives us the ability to offer everything from a single network EE SIM through to one SIM that delivers connectivity on every single UK network, all 4 of them. There are only 4 UK networks. I know there's a lot of brands out there, but there's only 4 real UK networks. So we can give you one SIM that will use all of them. Those are the kind of solutions we provide. And those are the things that I'm going to go into, also covering off a bit about the 5G and the capabilities that's going to bring along. Given that we are where we are, I thought it would be appropriate to open with the Churchill quote that is, "To improve is to change, and to be perfect is to change often." And then I'm going to talk later about PSTN, which obviously was around when Churchill was born, and it hasn't changed until next year when it switches off and everyone's left with nothing. So we're going to cover off how you fix that problem next year as well. So in opening, I'm going to cover off the intelligent mobile data opportunity. What is intelligent mobile connectivity? Where and why is it useful? And then a little bit about 5G. The area of IoT is one of explosive growth, and intelligent mobile connectivity is driven by the need to improve understanding of what's at the edge. This could be a device and getting information from it. We provide connectivity to solar panel systems in many countries around the world. They need to understand what's coming back into the network. So being able to understand what's going on is absolutely paramount to being able to provide these new capabilities. To improve maintenance, to understand what needs to be done when it needs to be done. Long gone are the days when you just had the man in the van going around and just popping in to see if your coffee machine needed to be repaired. When you've got the mentioned earlier coffee high street brands like Costa Coffee and Caffè Nero and Starbucks, when you've got a coffee machine that is delivering thousands of cups of coffee a day and it stops working, it's a problem. It's a lot of loss of revenue. So if you've got SIMs in there that are looking at the grind of the bean, understanding what's actually going on with that machine, telling you when it's likely to need maintenance, then you've got a great opportunity to go there and preemptively do something about it rather than turn up after you've lost the money. Then you can improve workforce. It's to understand where people need to be, when they need to be, all about IoT connectivity, this just presenting the information from the edge back to somewhere and being able to intelligently understand it. So the other thing is it will also decrease faults, decrease spending. Probably a appropriate thing to talk about now with people who've talked about macroeconomics and stuff like that earlier. I'm not going to go into it, but it's an important thing to understand how you might better your solutions, how you might save money, how you might learn more about what you need to know. So what makes intelligent data and intelligent mobile data intelligent? It's not any one thing, but it's a number of capabilities that manufacture this. And it's important to say that intelligent mobile data is already the most important growth area in telecoms. This year, the UK is due to increase 33% based upon last year's data usage, mobile data usage, that is. That's up from 27% last year. So not only are we accelerating usage, we are accelerating the acceleration of usage. And that is something that 5G will only bring further forward. It's really important to highlight things like the migration away from PSTN. Nearly 2.5 million businesses still need to migrate away from PSTN. And there are nearly 500,000 premises that cannot access broadband. What do you do about those locations? How do you deliver a service to them when they can't get soon-to-be extinct copper options or Pangea or FTTP or things like that because no one's cabled up to them, especially when you're starting a location from scratch right now. We've got countless examples of shopping centres and workplaces that are being repurposed into Deliveroo dark kitchens or Get Ears and other things like that. And what they need is they need to be able to start the next day. So being able to send out a router that has 4G or 5G connectivity and enabling someone to start using those services immediately is really important to the running of a service. It's also important to mention that no business is a single site anymore. Everyone's talked about how the change that COVID has brought is that the services that we always used to use when we were in the office now need to be replicated at the edge. We expect to be able to do those things, and yet we've got kids and or other people in our house streaming Disney or YouTube or trying to e-learn or whatever else it is, taking away from the network connectivity that we're trying to use to do work. If I have countless neighbours who were trying to teach their children during COVID, allow them to learn online and then run 2 or 3 multiple Teams services and watch their home internet crash on the bandwidth requirements around it. And so the ability to offer these services out to the end point, to provide a service that isn't just your home internet through a SIM-based technology is a great one. And also being able to partner with Pangea and Britannic together, being able to offer all of that via what we call L2TP, it just means that we deliver all the mobile technology direct to Britannic, all 4 UK networks, direct to them. They then control the IP addressing. So it doesn't matter if you've got your own thing already set up at the edge with Britannic controlled IP addresses. They can add this in and still control the exact same group of IPs that you need to use to do your day job. And also, the last one, not only is the industry giving us the PSTN switch off and all the fun that that is bringing, they're also switching off 3G and 2G. Many people don't quite know when this is happening. What I can tell you is that both EE and Vodafone have committed to switching it off in January next year. That will be a H1 process where it rapidly shut down in all locations. 3 will switch off the following year, and O2 are the only ones who haven't quite confirmed when they'll be doing theirs yet. Then with 2G, EE and Vodafone have said they'll switch off 2G by 2025. So 2025 is becoming this flag in the air where you've got PSTN switch off and 2G and 3G all finishing by that point. So things need to be thought about now, about things you might already have out at the edge, whether it's any kind of connectivity for utilities or for telematics or for emergency help at hand solutions, whether it's government-based, any vertical you can think about. We'll be using SIMs somewhere for something right now. It's highly likely that there are 2G and 3G problems that need to be overcome and thought about right now. To my point earlier, what makes intelligent mobile data intelligent? Why can't I just go to the shop and buy a SIM and just pop down the road to Westminster? I was going to say Phones for You, but that's a bit old. The 3 shop or the O2 shop and just buy a SIM. Well, there's a lot of things that intelligent mobile data can do, and it's important that all of those things are considered when you're delivering the service you need to deliver. So data's one of them. It's not the only one, but data is an important thing. You might just buy an unlimited SIM, chuck it in and let it do what it needs to do. But you can't get anything from that. It's an unmanaged solution. It won't tell you anything. So we can deliver, via the connectivity we have with the UK networks, we can deliver every type of data from a meg a month on a SIM that's used for asset monitoring or telematics or manufacturing automation, all the way through this lovely data cake of information down to the bottom where you are providing terabytes of data to boats in the Mediterranean, providing mobile broadband, fast start connectivity for those locations that can't get their infrastructure in. And to be able to offer all of those kinds of things is an absolute requirement to deliver something that's intelligent. Something else is to have a resilient core network that's connected to AWS so that you can spin up opportunities as and when you need to. We've just put AWS servers live in Australia for an opportunity because we need to control the amount of latency. So to be able to be cloud-based and deliver those services in those countries and meet the requirements of customers is vitally important. Another thing is, I've already touched upon the layer 2, the L2TP, the layer 2 tunnel protocol. It's probably not that interesting to most people, but what it does is, and what Britannic will enable you to see from that is very important. Because if you're looking at security and you just get a SIM from the high street and you pop that into your services in the hope that that will save you when your Ethernet or your Pangea breaks, isn't necessarily the right answer, because you don't know if it's working, you can't test it, you can't see what's going on, you've got no intelligence around it. So it's vitally important to understand that, and also to be able to have some IP control, so that that IP is something that your entire business sees and understands as a recognized friendly IP, especially with more and more attacks going on right now within cybersecurity awareness, things like that. It's also important to have reach. So we can deliver to 185 countries, and we can utilize 960 networks across those. What's probably really important is that we have delivered to over 80 of these countries. So we've got live working services in these countries, be it solar wind farms, empowered tuk-tuks in Africa, ATM machines, EPOS machines in the Caribbean. There's an example everywhere. Not all of those things, or all of those things combined, provide you some of what is intelligent mobile data. But there are a bunch of other things as well. More things around being able to control your outages, being able to control your bandwidth and coverage by having a multi-network SIM that I mentioned earlier. Because what happens if you've got an EE SIM and then the cell tower in the local vicinity that's on EE just drops out for that day, the one day you needed it, the one day everything was offline? If you've got a mobile network that can provide you a multi-network SIM that has the ability to deliver to all of those or receive data from any of the available networks, it can just jump off of the one it was using and join the next best one, O2 or Vodafone, whichever one it is. And it will enable you to then use the services you need to use. It's important to make sure that people don't suddenly get hit by massive overages. People have often been worried about the fact that using mobile data, what happens if people suddenly use a terabyte of data? We've got the ability with our intelligent mobile capabilities to create stops or finish lines, so you can stop the SIM at 1 gig, 2 gig, 5 gig, 10 gig, whatever it is, so that you can stop those overages occurring. You can also create intelligent ways of tiering the information, so that you might have a SIM that is used at different times of the year at different amounts. A great example is Cornwall and the car parks. So during the summer, massively used, and the machines that do all the ANPR and the machines that do all of the ticketing need a lot more data because there are thousands of people queuing up to get into these car parks. In the winter, you've just got the 3 hardened surfers and their cars, and therefore the data usage for those devices is a lot less. If you could tailor it so that you pay for the amount you use and there are effectively tiers created within that system, it's a far more cost-effective way of managing the cost of the implementation. That's not something you can do on fiber or any of the other fixed connectivities, nor is being able to pool all the data. If you've got hundreds and hundreds of deployments and you want to be able to just give 1 gig to each one, but only one site goes down at any one time, then all of that data can be pulled together so that that one location can use as much of that 300, 400, 500 gig as it needs to, so that it can get through what it needs to. But every location is effectively contributing simultaneously and symmetrically to that, but they can eat asymmetrically from it. So it's a great way of being able to manage your costs and being able to deliver services. We can also talk about being able to add static IPs, and that's across all the UK networks and all the other capabilities globally, and being able to manage changes on the fly using a portal. There's also a lot of talk now about multi-IMSI and EUICC. I'm not going to get too acronym heavy in this because IoT is littered with acronyms, and I don't want to turn this into that. So if you want to ask specifically about any of these afterwards, we have a stand out there. Please do come and ask us. But ultimately, being able to have a SIM that could move from a network like AT&T because you're going into the US, and then moving to Movistar because you're going into Brazil and there are roaming issues in that country. And then when you move into Europe and going on to Orange France is a very powerful thing for the right opportunity. I mentioned it earlier, it's very important to have an actual portal that enables you to monitor and modify this kind of stuff, because you need to be able to see what's going on. You need to see your SIMs. We can provide the information from all of the UK networks, all the foreign networks in one location. And just bear in mind that every UK network has a multitude of different platforms sitting under it, which is crazy, but that's how it works. So O2 runs 3 or 4 platforms, Vodafone runs 3 or 4 platforms. All of them are available within our capability so that you can see where all your SIMs are, what they're doing. What does this make it easy for you to be able to do? We'll definitely connect IoT solutions together and be able to replace the fixed connectivity that was being used for your EPOS machines or for your backup for your stores, or maybe you were trying to start up new offices in locations where you couldn't get connectivity. Whilst you might be able to order ADSL right now, people are finding more and more problems when they place an order because there just isn't capacity, no one's building it out, and therefore you might get an acceptance of an order for ADSL or FTTC, but nothing actually comes from it. Nothing will deliver in fruition. So therefore, you need to look at another way of doing it. We can also provide you unlimited 5G. So being able to provide you unlimited 5G with a static IP to enable you to fast start a location that you were expecting to have an Ethernet line delivered to, so that you can get people working and you can get a multitude of different solutions that require this connectivity online straight away. Why and where is all of this useful? I mentioned a couple of things just now, but here are some examples as to where we've seen real benefits. And I will caveat this saying that there is not a vertical around that doesn't benefit from this right now. So if you want examples later that aren't in aviation, education, QSR or retail, by all means, please do ask us. But we have got examples for everywhere. If I give you a quick overview of the aviation one, this was our ability to deliver a global mobile WAN for an aviation company so that they could utilize 2 price points for every location they went to in the world to be able to get connected when they touch down in those airports and need to do what they need to do. Game changer for them. Ironically enough, they will direct with Vodafone beforehand, but the trouble is when you go direct to a network, they have a list of things they'll provide you. Here's my thing, it's a monthly option for 10 gig, you buy it, that's it, you've got it for 3 years. Being able to use intelligent mobile data to create the right plan for the right requirement is vitally important. If I touch upon retail as well, a lot of retail is having to cease the PSTN lines. The ADSL doesn't work. They're getting rid of those things. Instead, they're putting in routers with 4G or 5G connectivity, because when the primary line does fail, they want something that they know has the ability to touch the different networks that are available, but also is more cost effective because they can provide a small amount of data for every store, knowing that not every store is going to go down at any one time. So it's managing costs and also forward planning, providing you a solution beyond the PSTN switch off. We were fortunate enough to win an opportunity in education during COVID, which meant that we had to end up providing connectivity for 102,000 students so that they could learn while they were at home. This was to do with the digitally unavailable group of people within our society, whether they come from broken homes and they move from mum's house to dad's house during the week during COVID times. They need something to get them on so that they can join Google Classroom or go to the online services and download what they need when they need it. This was a great solution. It was providing multi-network capability. We got 102,000 children on, and right towards the end of putting this solution live, someone suddenly went, we're giving unfettered internet access to a bunch of kids who've got quite a lot of time on their hands right now during COVID. Isn't this like a Daily Mail front page just waiting to happen? So we ended up applying a content filtering solution. that isn't like a mobile ion or a SOTI that's on a device. This is actually on the SIM. It's at network level. So it doesn't matter what network they're on. If they were on any one of the 4 networks, it didn't matter. It controlled everything that they were allowed to do. So they had a very, very finite list of things that they could do. And the great thing about that is that the actual amount of data they needed to use fell through the floor. Because the minute you remove TikTok and YouTube and Spotify and every other social media thing out there, actual business doesn't need as much data as people anticipate. The problem is YouTube, Spotify, TikTok, and everything else that runs in the background. So being able to apply that was fantastic. We showed them the savings in data. We showed them the security and safety that it enabled them to pass on to the children. Post that, we've had people from finance and other industries say to us, we need this kind of thing. We need to enable our staff to have this solution where they are, when they are, so they can get connected. But we also don't want them being able to use this to do all sorts of things on work time, because it's against our policy. We have to have some kind of HR operational control over what they're doing, when they're doing. And also it saves on the data usage. So implementing this and actually putting it in from, say, 9 to 5, so that during 9 to 5, all they can do are the things that are planned within the content filtered, group of things, enables them to save money, but also enables them to make sure that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing when they're supposed to be doing it. There are hundreds of ways that this can be used in other verticals, but those are just 2 examples that we've got. I mentioned QSR earlier and being able to fix coffee machines or know when coffee machines are about to break. That same thing was then applied into construction for jackhammers and other devices, John Deere tractors, all those kinds of things, combine harvesters. And the thing was, it was understanding either the vibration levels or how often it was doing what it was doing, the pressure of something. Just getting that bit of data and taking it back so that someone can look at it and it falls outside of an acceptable parameter enables someone to say, that's about to break. We need to take it in, do some preemptive maintenance on it so it doesn't actually break while it's with the client. So those things, once you've sold a solution and once you've provided something, you suddenly find a myriad of different ways of delivering that to different verticals. What about going forwards? So bear with me on this, but changes to old methods of connectivity have opened up new opportunities. And we see this right now. We see this with the PSTN switch off. We see this with 2G and 3G. We see all of these things happening. And so I think it's probably appropriate that we talk about poo for a second. And the reason being is that in 1894, there was a oft talked about great manure crisis. And a newspaper predicted around the time that in 50 years, every street in London will be buried under 9 feet of manure. The problem was that there were around 50,000 horses a day delivering and providing all the services that were needed in London, whether it was pulling the buses, the carriages, delivering goods, and all those things. Horses leave a lot of manure. So the streets of London and the streets of many other cities was a writhing cesspit of fetid horse manure everywhere. Combined, I'm glad I had the afternoon slot. I just twigged that. Combined with horses that were massively overworked. And the problem was these horses were overworked. They died. They left them there. It was very heavy. The horse is a heavy beast. So they left them there in the streets. So you ended up with this lovely depiction of a London street with that kind of scenario. And the reason I bring this up is twofold. One thing, 1894, Winston Churchill was born 1874, so he was in his teens around this time. Ironically, PSTN was also being used in its infancy around this time. We're still using it today to deliver a large amount of our technology. We don't do this anymore, but we still rely on PSTN and change. Churchill talks about change and the need for change. There are things that we have relied on for far too long that need to change. But within 15 years, this whole crisis has completely disappeared. And why was that? Daimler, Benz, Ford, advent of the car, created clean roads, not so much clean air. That's something for now. But it's important to realise that what happens is necessity breeds invention. And the moral of that story really is that overcoming insurmountable problems with unexpected solutions is a key thing when looking at what technology is out there right now and how I can best deliver a better solution. It's not just going down the Sajia route. It's not just doing this. It's understanding what's available right now and how you might get the best solution that you need for your requirements. I found this an ingenious use of telephones. I think, most people, a lot of people in businesses now don't even recognize those phones, apart from when they watch a UK Gold rerun or something, or Only Fools and Horses. But I thought this was a great use of, soon-to-be past technology. So we move on to the PSTN switch-off. And I think it's definitely on everyone's radar right now. It feels a bit like a battery at the moment. We've kind of had COVID, we've had all the lockdown, we've had all these things, and then out of that, suddenly everyone's gone, by the way, we're switching off everything in 2025. And it's not we're switching it off in 2025, it's we're switching it off right now. So 10,000 exchanges around the UK, it's about 1,800 that have already been switched off. So that means they're already on their stop sell thing, route. I think a very important thing to also highlight is that by September next year, you won't be able to order PSTN lines. You won't be able to order ADSL. You won't be able to order FTTC. It's a complete stop sell by September 2023. So whilst what's in the ground right now and providing services will last till about 2025, depending on where you are and whether your exchange has been switched off, if you are rolling anything out anywhere that used to use those technologies, you won't be able to in 10 months' time. And that's important because most businesses are opening new locations or providing new ways to deliver technology or connectivity to locations. This way is the old way, and it's gone very soon. I think it's important to touch upon that it's not just phones that will be affected by this. We've talked about, mobile technology. We've talked about connectivity. Everyone thinks, okay, that's my home internet. That might be the backup for the stores I have, or the backup for the cloud servers, or whatever it is. But it's all of these things. All of these things are using the PSTN right now. We totted it up, and there's over 200 different applications that need a replacement. And it's lifts, alarm systems with lifts. It's CCTV, it's streetlights, it's traffic lights, it's EPOS machines, it's faxes, it's telehealth, it's yachts for all of those who have our yachts parked in the dock. It's those and the mooring and the technology for those. It's ships in dock and emergency lines, absolutely ATMs. Most ATMs now are being replaced with multi-network SIMs. It's just an interesting way that we need to move to think that ATMs are still powered by PSTN, but they can't be any longer. Those all need to change. We were fortunate enough to deliver a solution recently which was effectively replacing around 8,000 PSTN lines with multi-network connectivity, enabling large transport hubs to swap out their street lights or their traffic lights or their emergency warning systems. There are many, many of these out there right now. I'm sure many of you probably have them within your business, whether it's looking after housing associations and door entry solutions, or whether it is lifts and those replacements. Some of the things that we've developed in the last couple of years absolutely look to these requirements. So, for instance, lifts. Most of the time when you have an issue in a lift, you need to be able to make a call out. A lot of multi-network SIMs don't have a UK number. So we've developed a proposition where you can have a multi-network SIM that uses all the UK networks, but also has a UK number on it so that people can call in. It's really important for door entry systems as well, to have a UK number on it and to be able to use all the networks available. Going back to where the opportunity is, we can talk about a lot of different things. We can talk about 4G over L2TP and how that solution right now, just using 4G, will enable us to deliver solutions for street furniture and get rid of the need to dig up roads for fibre. But we can also talk about VoIP, and everything that you do on VoIP is very much like what you need to do with phone call emergency services, lifts and security cameras, door access systems, things I've already talked about. But it's really important that your primary services can actually run better using mobile technology than using 4G, than using ADSL. So if you were to use 4G right now, a large amount of the time it will give you a better result than ADSL. A significant amount of the time it will give you an equivalent version of FTTC. And that's not even going on to 5G and the solution that that will be able to give you. Excuse me. I think it's important to circle back to the economic challenges that will come along next year, the year after, because it's important to focus on what must be done as opposed to the nice to haves. What shall I do? What's my roadmap of change? We've talked about 2G and 3G cessation. We've talked about PSTN switch off. These are kind of musts because there isn't another way. You can't just sit there and not let a solution be provided for the PSTN replacement. It needs to be done. And I think it's also important to realize that there will always be outages with fixed line connectivity. So it's really important to have another solution that works with that. And we touched upon the way that we deliver services with Britannic now. If they're delivering you fiber services, having an IP range that's running on the mobile networks enables you to cut over seamlessly. There's no interruption to any of the things that you're providing on the end of that. And it's just a brilliant way of dealing with those intermittent outages that might happen on any kind of fixed connectivity. The last one on this is talking about pre-Ethernet. So when you're ordering your fixed line, your Ethernet lines, typically you'll have a 3-month, maybe a 6-month wait time, depends on where you are and what's being delivered. There's a fast way to get a solution out there right now. You could get a solution out there next day. That's all about delivering either 4G or 5G to the location. You can plug that in, you can start getting connected, and it's as easy as that. I've just left this here as a reminder because it's a really important thing. I see so many people's sign-offs on their emails asking me, do I know about the PSTN switch-off? Like, yeah, I know about the PSTN switch-off. I say to them, do you know about the dates? Yeah, 2025, it'll all be off. It's like, you know, next year you won't be able to order any of that stuff. September next year. What? Yeah, don't talk about 2025, talk about 2023. That's 10 months away. And then also, do you know about the 2G and 3G switch-offs? The what's? People aren't really talking about it at the moment. Everyone's looking at PSTN. No one's talking about these. And they're very important because it's going to impact people who've got solutions out there right now. Anything that's been out in the field for more than 5 years probably uses 2G and 3G, whether it's utilities, highway monitoring, anything out there, ANPR. It's a vital requirement for change. That's my bit on cessation and doom and gloom. Let's talk about 5G. So I wanted to give a little summary around where we are with 5G because COVID has slowed the development and delivery of 5G into the country. It's picking up again now, but I think everyone would have liked to have been slightly further along than we are. What will 5G give us in numbers? So we are talking about peak speeds of 20 gigabits per second. So we're talking about stuff that's many, 100 times faster than 4G. We're talking about speeds that are equivalent of good Ethernet lines. We're talking about everyday speeds that someone can quite happily consume, being at 100, 200, and more as they bring out further iterations of 5G. We're talking about latency that's at 1 millisecond. That's, for me, probably the most important bit. Speed's interesting, speed's good, latency is great. We were given a demo recently by EE on their 5G haptic gloves and their 5G trauma response units that they put into certain locations, stadiums and whatnot. So you've got a big rucksack with gizmos and gadgets. But the great thing is that it's 5G connected. And what that means is the person on the ground, the warden, the security guard, whoever it is, or hopefully a partially trained medic of some sort, is able to put on these gloves and then dial back in, that's probably the wrong term nowadays, use the connectivity to go back to an NHS hub and speak to an on-call surgeon, consultant, whoever it is, who is actually able to immediately feel the pulse of the person that the haptic glove is touching, who's able to diagnose on the fly. We've got a load of stuff out there right now with the ambulance services that enable them to do triage as they're heading towards the hospital. It's vitally important because those 20 minutes, 30 minutes of travel time can be a real game changer. It can mean the difference between someone suffering a really bad event as opposed to a far less bad event. So latency for me is the one that will change a lot of things. That's the one that will enable the really cool things to happen. Again, really important, massive connectivity. What this means is, I don't know if you've ever, I'm hoping that all of you have been to an event in a stadium at one point in your life. So whether it's a music event or a sport event, but you go there and you're with some friends and one of them says, I'm just going to the bar, do you want a drink? No, I'm fine. They're gone for like 10 minutes. You text them, yeah, get me a drink. They come back, they've just got their drinks. Did you get my text? No. Because you might look like you've got signal, but nothing works. And the reason is because at the moment, the networks, the 4G networks, the cell towers can basically deal with around 40,000 simultaneous events. Once it goes beyond that, everything starts grinding to a halt. And things slow down, so you've got whichever was first. And that means the minute you leave the stadium at the end of the day and you head towards the tube, you suddenly get a bunch of messages from people. What do you mean you want a drink? Blah, blah, blah. All completely useless to me now. Massive connectivity will stop that occurring. You will be able to get 1 million devices connected. It's vitally important because I would imagine all of you now have 2 or 3 SIM-connected things on you, whether it's a watch or a laptop or a MiFi unit or 1 or 2 phones. All of those things need to be connected, but the cell towers can't cope with the requirements. And that's where 5G, when it's fully out there, will be able to deliver. At the end of 2021, there were 660 million 5G subscriptions in the world. It's not very many. It's not a massive number. But we are seeing vast improvements. And what I will do now is show you where we are in 2022. So the latest information has shown us that we will see peak speeds at around 500 megabits per second, average speeds running into about 150 megabits per second. There's a big variation. So if you're near to a cell tower, you can suddenly find you're getting 500 or 600. And if you're a lot further away, it's not so good. But this is where we're seeing averages right now. So we're getting towards where we need to be. But we haven't cracked the latency piece yet. We're seeing better latency than 4G, which was probably at the 40, 50 mark. So we've seen a good decrease, but we want to get to that 10 and below, 5 and below. That's where it's really cool. Coverage is important. The reason I've got people on there is because this is population coverage. Population coverage is a lot more achievable in the UK than geographical coverage. Geographically, we've got about 11% coverage for 5G at the moment. I've given it away. I was about to ask you a question, but as you can see from here, E and 3 are the front runners of 5G. So for a long time, people have always said, well, E and Vodafone are the 2 best networks in the UK. They absolutely were. 4G speeds proves it. Geographical coverage proves it. Population coverage proves it. Every stat proves it. 5G, rethink the map. 3 got incredible spectrum, incredible investment, and they and EE are leading the way on coverage and on speeds. Just to give you a little information around kind of where we are, the H1 2022 average, the medians for the UK download speeds on both 4G and 5G combined, EE still led the way on 66 Mbps, and then you've got 3 on about 30, you've got Vodafone on just above 20, and you've got O2 on just below 20. So these are kind of the speeds you're seeing on the combined technologies right now. So we're not at that 5G status yet. But arguably, this is better than a lot of ADSL, most ADSL. This is as good as or better than a lot of FTTC, and these are also the averages. So whilst it depends on where you are and what is there, it's important to understand that the technology that is via the mobile connections can meet the requirements of a location nowadays. So I don't know if you've seen this, the advert that was run on TV from EE. This is an actor called Tom Ellis, but he was pictured, I think it was a base camp, with a robotic arm attempting to give him a shave. A dangerous thing right now with the latency we just discussed. This is the end goal. This is where we'll be with 1 second latency. This is kind of where we are right now. So I wouldn't really recommend it for robots shaving you or anything, but there's definitely the connectivity capability there to meet the requirements of the PSTN switch off and a lot of other things besides. I touched upon this earlier with what 5G will bring to you, and it is really important that it isn't just a speed thing. So we talk a bit about speed, we talk about 5G's faster, that's great. But as I said, the ability to have ultra reliable low latency, as they call it, again, a great acronym, URLLC. It's just latency. It's how good is the latency. If you can get mobile as good as fixed, that's where you'll be winning. And also, the enhanced mobile broadband and massive machine type communication. Touched upon both of them. It's around getting as many devices as we will need to within small areas connected going forwards and having the right amount of data and spectral efficiency. What will this enable us to do? Well, I can tell you what it will enable us to do right now. Right now, we can deliver 5G mobile broadband. We can deliver it as a pre-Ethernet solution. It can be delivered as on-demand backup. You can put private static IPs, public static IPs on it, and you can take from a single network. So it can be EE, Vodafone, O2, whichever is required for the location that it goes into. But you can deliver a great 5G solution next day that will give you the ability to effectively fast start a location. This is important. Construction. Why would you order a fixed line for construction? If you're going to be in that location for 6 months or 12 months building something, and it's going to take you 3 to 6 months to get a line in, it doesn't make sense. And also, who's going to use it once it's gone in? It's just pointless. So then all of construction tends to use mobile technology because they can take it wherever they need to. It'll be a mix of single network stuff, multi-network stuff I touched upon, but it's the way of delivering services in that vertical. Healthcare. We talked about being able to do triage on ambulances. It's vitally important to have connectivity for being able to understand what's going on, whether it's in a hospital environment or in a doctor's environment. We recently replaced, I think it was 4,000 or 5,000 ADSL and FTTC connections in Scotland with multi-network solutions. It was originally intended to be the backup, but what they found in a large amount of the locations was that it was performing better than the primary. So they just swapped it around and it became the primary instead. Then the ability to move around with it is great because you can put it on a screening bus, and that screening bus can go from Aberdeen to Inverness or wherever it needs to go to, and you've got the connectivity there on the venue, on the vehicle, being able to deliver you for any one of those networks. Home workers and remote offices, we need to be able to deliver those services for those people. It's going to be a hybrid working environment going forwards. There's never going to be this mass return to the office. And therefore, we need to think about what's going to happen. What's going to happen from a cybersecurity perspective? What's going to happen with people who've got connectivity? They've got their home network. They've got their kids on it. They've got their fridge on it. They've got their washing machine on it. There was a report talking about all the crazy things that have been IoT connected that included things like rectal thermometers. I don't know why anyone would ever need one of those things connected, but they're on there. And these things are easily hackable. So then when people are thinking about the security of their businesses, they need to think about how can I provide a business level secure environment so that my staff can work from home in a way which doesn't give me and my chief security officer nightmares at night. So I think it's a fair bet that 5G will become the first choice for last mile access technology in the end. And it will have major economic and social benefits to boot. It's a fairly, I say blasé statement. It's a strong statement when you look at all the fibre that's going out there. But if you remember 4G when it first came about in the mid-2010s, it was 2014, 2015, the speeds that you got then were nowhere near as good as they are now. If you see EE on 4G+, you'll be looking at 60 to 70 meg connectivity. So 5G will bring out further iterations, and you'll be talking about these incredible connections with incredible latency. And that's where it will be an absolute game changer. Not now, but we're looking at the next 12 to 18 months. In summary, 5G will help with all of these different things: the performance, the ease, the cost. You've got social and economic factors, and you've also got demand for being able to provide these 5G services in all of these locations. That's it from me, Jonathan.